So, welcome everyone to Psalms for Life, in which we explore a different chapter of Tehillim each week. And today's chapter is chapter 52. And it is a segula for help in controlling oneself from speaking lashon hara, gossip of all kinds. And briefly, we'll touch on the three main kinds in the context of the psalm. It's unavoidable. This topic comes up a lot, and rather than approaching it as, oh, something I've got to learn and do, and then I forget, and so on, David gives us a very instructive story that makes us think quite differently about the effects of negative speech. Okay. At its heart, this also is a psalm about jealousy. And as we discussed in previous classes, David's father-in-law was bent on killing David. And he ran to Nov. David escaped to Nov, the city of the Kohanim, to hide. And at that time, the Mishkan was in Nov. The Beis HaMikdash, the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, hadn't been built yet. So David knew that that was a sanctuary and a safe place. But he fled so quickly, he didn't have time to grab any food or weapons. And so Ahimelech HaKohen, Ahimelech the priest, saw that David was in need. David came to him, and he gave David bread and a sword. Now, Ahimelech, we have to understand, didn't know that David was fleeing from the king. He had no idea. He thought that he maybe was running an errand for the king and doing something as a mission for the king. And so Ahimelech, when he gave David the sword and the bread, with bread and the sword, it's actually the Midrash, when he gave these to him, he, it's the Tanakh, when he gave these to him, he did it in all innocence, not understanding the kind of fleet run for his life that David was involved in. Now, Doeg, who we also have mentioned before, we know he was Shaul's top advisor. He was a tremendous Torah scholar. He was the head of the Sanhedrin. And he witnessed the exchange between Ahimelech and David. Okay, for those who just entered late, David fled to Nov because Shaul was trying to have him killed, and Ahimelech sheltered him, gave him food and a sword, and not knowing what David was fleeing from. Now, Doeg, when he saw this exchange, he was already very jealous of Ahimelech and David, and he ran to Shaul, he ran to the king, and he said, look, Ahimelech and David, they're conspiring against you together. Now, this wasn't only lashon hara, it was more than that. As we go through the psalm, we'll talk about it. Shaul said the entire city needed to be killed, and he commanded his guards to go kill the entire city of priests, and they refused. And so Shaul said to Doeg, listen, you brought the charges, you go kill them. And it is said, very sadly, that Doeg went and he murdered 85 people, murdered priests and their families. Okay. David escaped. Okay, but Ahimelech and the rest of the priests, or at least most of the priests, did not. Now, we'll begin. Lamnatseach maskil leDavid. And as we mentioned before, a maskil is a song that's going to impart to us some intelligence, and it's related to the word sechel, okay, or intellect and intelligence. And a maskil, it's interesting because it's also something that we can understand with our own logic and intelligence. We don't need necessarily, okay, we always need emunah, but we don't need emunah to break down and understand the psalm. We need to use our intelligence because it's very logical. A happens, so therefore the consequence is B. Okay. Now, our sages say at the time that the story of David and Doeg took place, despite the incredible education of the generation, okay, there was a lot of problems. Okay, the children were brilliant. They were so well versed in the Talmud and everything, let alone the adults, but the children were absolutely brilliant. So what was wrong with this generation? They had one main character flaw, developed into two expressions of that: jealousy, and they spoke Lashon Hara. Okay. So that is why, say our sages, that they fell before their enemies in battle, because they were jealous of each other and they spoke Lashon Hara. Now, can you speak Lashon Hara about someone without being jealous of them? Possibly, sure. But if you analyze why you harbor negative feelings for someone, it's very often linked to jealousy in one way or another. Certainly in Doeg's case, it was. Okay, we'll continue. Bevo Doeg ha'adomi v'yaged l'Shaul v'yomer lo ba David el beis Ahimelech. When Doeg the Ha'adomi, the Edomite, came and told Shaul and said to him, David came to the house of Ahimelech. So David is telling us that this psalm is about this story. Doeg in Hebrew literally means a warrior. Okay. Why a warrior? Because despite his brilliance and his erudition, his knowledge, his scholarship, and even his power, he was always scheming. He had no emunah. He relied on his own intelligence, his own schemes, his own plans. He was a self-made man, so to speak. And he didn't rely on Hashem, and he wanted power, so he schemed to get it. And rather than work for the good of the Jewish community, and work for the good of the Jewish people, and work to serve Hashem, and even work to serve the king that he worked with, everything was about me, Doeg. Where can I get to? How can I rise to the top? What can I grab for myself? It's very sad. So it's a wasted life. Okay. It reminds me a lot of the parsha we read a few weeks ago. Okay, or that we will read specifically also coming up, but we read about it a few weeks ago. We discussed it. Korach. Okay. All right. Now, Ha'adomi, the Edomite, is related to the word dam for blood, because Doeg is a murderer. And also, it says there's many comments on why he's called the Edomite, Ha'adomi, also because he used to make others, Adomi, red with embarrassment. He used to humiliate others with his laser sharp erudition in debates. He always wanted to put other people down and prove them wrong and humiliate them. Not a pleasant trait at all. Okay, so I want to pull something up on the screen for you. Okay, so what you'll see here is the spelling of David is the first one. And the second is also the spelling of David, which is an expanded spelling slightly, which I'll explain. And then the third is Doeg. So the first spelling of David is Daled Vav Daled, which can be read as David, and it can also be read as Dod, which means beloved or lover. Now, why do we have two spellings for David? So the Chida explains that David wanted to distinguish between the gematria of Doeg and his name, David. And these are both 24. This is 464, and this is 4613. And I'm sorry, they're both 14, excuse me. And so he wanted to have a different spelling so he wouldn't be equated with Doeg. So he got the extra yud, which adds 10 on, which makes his name 24. So 14, 14, and 24. And it says, in fact, in Psalm 86, verse 17, make for me an extra os, a sign or a letter, for the good, so that my enemies may see and be shamed. So in Psalm 86, he's telling us that he asked for this extra os, this extra letter. Now, when is it spelled David in the first, and when is it spelled David with the yud in the second? So that is in Divrei Hayamim, the book of Chronicles. And that is how the change occurs in that book. Previously, we see it just spelled like this. So it was very important to David to have a good name. Now, this is interesting because although we don't see overt commentary about this, we see that what Doeg was doing was he was destroying or attempting to destroy the good name of David and the good name of Ahimelech and the priests with the spiteful Lashon Hara that he spoke to King Saul. So a good name is very important. And we should all daven to not only have a good name, we should earn a good name. We should work towards having a good name. Rebbe Nachman tells us that every relationship is a mirror, and to a certain extent, every event and situation in our life is a mirror. So that if we look on others kindly and we make excuses for that, we are dan l'chafschus, their misbehaviors, their faults, their flaws, and so on, then Hashem will be dan l'chafschus. He'll give us the benefit of the doubt as well, but also other people will as well, because everything in the universe mirrors. And of course, this is what the physicists are speaking about today, this kind of resonance. And if the resonance is happening at the particle level or at the atomic level, it's happening on the greater level as well. And that doesn't take emunah, that just takes a kind of common sense to understand this. Okay, and we can listen to the scientists. If that's what is going to make you recognize this, go ahead, listen to them, because it's a trait that's very important to develop, this understanding how to build a good name, give a good name to others. Okay, and the Rebbe Nachman says if you want to avoid the ayin hara, the evil eye, most of the time, not all the time, there's some people who are just going to be jealous of you and have ayin hara, but most of the time it's because you have ayin hara on them or someone else. Okay, we have to think about this. It's not always so clear cut. Okay, that's why we have to make it. Okay, it's what it is. We have to sit, reflect, talk it out. How can I improve in this area? I know myself. It's something I talk about and try to improve on. Do I always get an A plus? Definitely not. Okay, but I have gone very often from a D minus to a B plus or an A minus. It's a good jump, and we can all do it. Okay, we can all do it. All right, let's continue. We are on Gimel, verse 3. Ma tishalel b'ra'a hagibor, chesed el kol hayom. Why do you boast of evil, you gibor, you mighty man, you strong man? Hashem's kindness is constant. So David is asking, sort of rhetorically, and we're definitely rhetorically, Doeg, how can you gibor, you mighty scholar, how can you be proud of the evil that you are doing? The Midrash tells us what a real gibor is, what a real strong man is. This is in Shachar Tov for anyone's interested. One who conquers his Yetzer Hara. That's a gibor. And that comes from Pirkei Avos as well, the ethics of the fathers. So, the whole world views a great man very externally. What has he accomplished? What has he done? What has he achieved? What awards does he have? What power does he have? How much money does he have? What scholarship even does he have? Okay, and in this case, Doeg has scholarship. He has greatness. So he's a genius in Torah. But we are told very specifically by our sages, a gibor is a person who conquers his Yetzer Hara or her Yetzer Hara. Okay, when you conquer yourself, you're truly great. I want to tell you, I can say that my experience in changing the way I speak over the past 20 years, really working on that. Again, I'm flawed, but I really want to disclose to you because I want you to hear how important this is, that it's such a tremendous feeling of accomplishment when you conquer negative urges. For example, the urge to speak negatively, in this case, lashon hara, or to say a flippant remark to someone, or sarcasm. It's such a revelation that who's in charge of you? You are. If you want to be. If you want to be, it's yours for the taking. That's what free will is. Free will is the ability to be in charge of yourself. You cannot control the rest of the world. You can control and be in charge of yourself and become a woman of great character. Okay, and we're all working on that. I know the women here in class today are all working on that. Okay, let's continue. So it ends with saying Hashem's kindness is constant, and David is following that up with, you couldn't hurt me, says David, because Hashem is always kind to me. Okay, Hashem's good to me. That's why you couldn't hurt me, because it's up to Hashem. It's not up to you, Doeg. It's not even up to me, David. It's up to Hashem. Okay, let's continue. We are on verse 4. We have time. Havuos tachshov l'shonecha, kisa'ar milutash ose remia. Your tongue plots destruction as a sharpened razor, working deceit. So David is describing Doeg's periphery. I think so. I think that's the right word. And he makes at least 2, if not 3 kinds of lashon hara here. Okay, evil speech. Okay, lashon hara, an evil tongue. What are these 3 kinds of speech? So the first is lashon hara, where you go, you know something, it's true. Okay, Doeg did see Ahimelech giving David bread and a sword. Okay, again, Ahimelech did this in all innocence. He didn't know of the severe enmity and that between Shaul and David, and that David was fleeing for his life. And Doeg saw this happen, and he spoke truthfully. This is what people have to understand. To the king, saying, I saw what happened. Ahimelech harbored David. Now, this is rule number 1 of Shmeres Halashon, guarding your speech, that even a truth is, not only even a truth is Lashon Hara. When you say something that shouldn't be said, no matter how true it is, about someone else, that's Lashon Hara. You have a friend, and they lost their job, and they confided in you. And you went, you told everybody. Maybe they didn't want people to know. Maybe they didn't want people. Maybe they were sensitive about that. Okay. Another example that's given in the Sfarim is that you could say, oh, my friend, there's always cooking going on in his home, always cooking. And that can be interpreted 2 ways. One way is, wow, he's a Baal Tzedakah. He's a great giver of tzedakah, of charity, and he hosts a lot of guests, and therefore there's always food being prepared in his home to give to guests and to needy people. That's a positive interpretation. A negative interpretation could be, wow, that person's so gluttonous, they eat nonstop. So, we have to be careful what we say to one person about another. We have to be very careful. There are times when we may have to say something, but we need to learn the halachos, the the laws about when it is okay to speak and when not. And remember, there's an American expression or an English expression. Trying to remember the expression. Uh, Great people speak about ideas. Small people speak about other people. Okay, this is something to think about. Okay, and by the way, I mean, this is so pervasive in our culture. It's so infected. Um, the Jews in every background, because it's part of the Western culture. It's part of the culture of the world. It's very hard to get out of. But once you learn the laws and you can review the laws, it's not so difficult to see the difference. Okay, the next type is something that Doeg did, which is motzei shemra, to pull out or to give someone a bad name. And that means, we talked in the beginning about David wanting a good name, which is why the Yud was added to his name, as I showed you in the chart, in the post that I shared. So this is destroying someone with lies, okay, destroying their reputation. And, it can be such a simple thing. You think you know something about someone, you're not sure if it's the truth, but you're going to tell people anyway. We're not allowed to do that as Jews. We're a holy people. We speak the language of Lashon HaKodesh, the holy tongue. Okay, that's the opposite of Lashon Hara, and therefore, certainly, if we're going to speak in Hebrew of any kind, we have to be extra careful. But in any language, so we know that Doeg went and he lied and he said, Ahimelech knowingly armed your enemy and harbored him and fed him. Okay, so he went from Lashon Hara to Motzi Shemra. And then possibly there's Rechilus in there, which is when one person, okay, says something about, if you, let's say you spoke to someone about a problem you were having with someone else, and you said, my friend Sarah, having a problem with her, here's the situation, and say something negative, and then you run and tell Sarah. Okay, so first of all, you could have told that person, maybe we should talk about this in a different way, or maybe I'm not the right person, or maybe I can't listen to it. It's bordering on Lashon Hara, or it is Lashon Hara, or maybe I want to help you and I have to keep my mouth shut, whatever it is. But instead, you run and you tell Sarah, so-and-so was speaking about you, and here's what she said. You are stirring up a hornet's nest. This is rechilus. So I don't know exactly the words that Doeg spoke, but we can see that he was stirring up a hornet's nest not only between David and Shaul, which already existed, but now between Ahimelech and Shaul. So these are the three things that David is warning us against, all in this psalm. Okay, we're going to continue. We're in Hay, verse 5. Sorry, I'm going to find my page and push up my glasses. Okay. Ahavta ra mitov, sheker midaber tzedek salah. You loved evil more than good. You loved sheker, falsehood, lies, more than speaking righteousness, salah. Okay. Forever. This is what you love forever. I'll continue. Vav ahavta chol divrei bala. Lashon Mirima. Okay. You loved all destructive words, a deceitful tongue. Okay. So anything that could tear other people down, that's what you did, Doeg. Speaking to him. That's what you loved. What kind of, again, going back to that verse about the Gibor, what kind of Gibor is this? What kind of mighty person is this? It's pathetic. That's what it is. Okay. We're going to continue with Zion. 7, Gam el yitatzcha lanetzach, yachtecha vayisachacha, me'ohel v'shereshecha, me'eretz chayim Salah, there's a lot of salahs in here. We'll get to why. Let me translate first. Hashem too will tear you down forever. He will break you and uproot you from the land of life forever, the land of living forever. So all these salahs in this psalm is that Doeg has made his bed forever. Because why? He didn't do tshuva. That's why. He didn't say, let me, you know what? I did something wrong. Let me try to fix it. It's a hard thing to fix, very hard thing to fix, especially the murder of 85 innocents. So David's saying here, you forfeited your right to dwell in the tabernacle and the sanctuary. You visited it in Nov. And what did you do in Nov? You killed people there. You no longer have that. And another thing he forfeited, your Torah scholarship will never be taught in yeshivas. And he was the most brilliant Torah scholar of his time. Again, head of the Sanhedrin. Can you imagine? Nothing's going to be taught in a yeshiva. The Talmud says 3 angels of retribution attacked Doeg. And the first one caused him to forget his Torah knowledge, which is very painful for a scholar. The second is they burned his soul. And the third is they took those ashes and scattered them in every base Midrash. This is metaphorically speaking. The Talmud says in Brachas that Chazal used to leave the base Midrash, the study hall, okay, and with this prayer, with a special prayer, they would pray at the end of their study session, okay, that none of their group would ever be like Doeg. That's those ashes. Could you imagine? That's how his name lives on in infamy, okay, forever. My goodness, what a consequence here. Again, going back to the fact that this is a maskil. You don't necessarily need emunah and bitachon to understand David's message here. It helps, it's good, but it's illogical. You know, Doeg did A and B happened. Okay. We'll continue. Sorry, where am I? Oh, also, Doeg will leave no children behind who are scholars because he killed Ahimelech's children. It's terrible. Okay, let's continue. What are we up to? Okay, we're on Ches, on 8. Vayisru tzadikim, vayirau, va'alav yischaku. And righteous men will see and be frightened and laugh at him. When they see the consequences he faced for his evil, they're going to jeer at him. Okay, what a dummy. I mean, really, what a dummy. Now, when somebody is a Rasha, okay, in contradistinction to every person, okay, we can't judge whether someone's a Rasha or not for the most part. People are a mixture. When someone's a Rasha, like Doeg, okay, there is actually that it's okay to mock them. And that's what people did. Okay, they mocked Doeg. Hine hagever lo yasim Elohim ma'utso o vayivtach barov ashram yaoz bahavaso. Okay. So behold the man who didn't make Hashem his stronghold, his strength, but he trusted in his abundant riches, his wealth, and he drew strength from his treachery. Okay, so he doesn't place his strength in Hashem. He places it literally in his money and his treachery, his evil thoughts, his schemes. That's what he trusts. His own plots. That's what he relies on. Now, this is, you know, I'm sorry, I have to sign someone in. Hold on 1 second. Okay. So this is, you know, quite a lesson for us. Now, nobody here, and I'm sure nobody who's going to watch on YouTube is having evil We're not sitting here evilly plotting against someone, but we do tend to rely on our plans. We tend to suss things out and examine and make a plan based on our intellect and so on. And the hint to us here is what Rebbe Nachman says, is that we can't rely on our intellect in the way that we do. We can use and must use and should use our intellect. Okay, you're a smart cookie, go ahead. Use your intellect, but rely on Hashem. And this is something that people struggle with. You know, people think they have a lot of emunah and a lot of bitachon, a lot of faith and trust in Hashem. And then they find out they're relying on their own plots and their own plans and their own schemes, and they may be for the good. They may be good things, but the Rebbe tells us, don't rely on them because they are going to lead you away from Hashem if you start to rely on them. There's going to be a spiral away. Rely on Hashem and then use the brains that he gave you to accomplish. Very different approach with very different flavor of experience. Your life experience changes and a very different outcome. Why? Because even if you have the same exact outcome, okay, the way you feel about the outcome and connect to the outcome is totally different. I think I don't have to explain anymore. I think that's self-apparent. So let's say you get together, a couple of friends, and you want to start a business, and you plan, and you want to make a business plan, and you want to do this, and you want to do that, you talk about options. Then before that meeting, you should pray. And then afterwards, before you solidify anything, you should also pray. Then by pray, I mean make hisbodedus, make hitbodedut. Talk it through with Hashem. Ask a Torah scholar, okay, not a Doeg, but a good Torah scholar. Ask a Rav. Get input from someone who can give you a spiritual input, okay? Use your own spiritual input. And then you will have a plan worth having rather than a plan like Doeg's. Okay, we continue. Excuse me. Ma'ani kazayis ra'anan beves Elohim batachti v'chesed Elohim olam ba'ed. But I am like an evergreen olive, referring, I think, to a tree, in the house of Hashem. Like an evergreen olive tree in the house of Hashem. I trust in the kindness of Hashem forever and ever. So again, comparing what Doeg has forever and ever, nothing is nothing. He has just a bad name for himself and no Torah knowledge. He's burnt up. Okay. And David, however, explains that he and his children are going to flourish evergreen. Okay, we know that because Mashiach is David's descendant. And also there's this idea that David is, certainly through Tehillim, we see in these beautiful Psalms that we're learning. Some are more Musar, they're giving us more ethical correction. Some are more inspiring. Some are giving us some mystical insight. Whatever it is, we see that David is a source of illumination for the Jewish people. Just like when you light an olive oil lamp. Okay, many people light olive oil lamps for Hanukkah. Many people light olive oil lamps for Shabbat as well. Or they light an extra one. I usually light an extra one, an olive oil lamp for Shabbat, for Shabbos. So that's because pure extra virgin olive oil gives you the brightest, clearest, most gorgeous light. Way more gorgeous than a candle, way more gorgeous than pure olive oil. There's something about the light from olive oil it's holy, really. And it's because it comes from an olive, which is really a holy fruit. Okay? And so David is comparing himself. Doeg, you're a Gibor. You know, I am an evergreen olive. Where? In the house of Hashem. You can't even go into that house. You're not welcome. You have blood on your hands, blood from your tongue, and blood from your sword. Okay? Odecha le'olam ki asisa Va'akave shimcha ki tov neged chasidecha. I will thank you forever and ever when you do this. It's referring to Hashem, His kindness, and put hope in your name, for you are good to those devoted ones. So David again is wrapping up this psalm by telling us that his forever and ever is one of gratitude and one of hope. Because if we place Hashem before us, we're devoted to Hashem, Hashem is good to us. Now, I want to refer back to what I said about our plans and our well-intentioned plans. Okay, put Hashem before them. Think about Hashem before you do, daven before you do, before you make a decision, before you pick up the phone, before you sign a paper, before you sit and plan, or at least after you sit and plan. Here, I have these great plans. Now I have to talk it through with Hashem. Get used, and in the middle of your plans, get used to talking to Hashem about everything. Things will become clearer for you after a while. Now, I want to say many years ago, well, it's not so long ago, it's a couple of years ago, I worked a very long time at the Breslov Research Institute, and I used to have meetings with the director all the time, maybe even a little late. And I would say after every meeting, okay, now we have to go make, I was allowed to say because I was older, I'm much older, so I could tell them a little bit, now we have to go make heat dude on what we just discussed. And let's see what the outcome is. Maybe we're going to come back and change our plan. Maybe we'll get a new insight to add to our plan. Maybe we'll have to scrap our plan. Whatever it is, we need to think about it and talk about it with Hashem and put Hashem before us. And that really, including Hashem in everything in your life, no matter where you're holding, okay, because we're all working towards a closer relationship, but remembering to include Hashem, that's what devoutness is. That's what devotedness is. And that's how we become showered with Hashem's good. And I want to remind everyone, Ella asks, what is the segula for this psalm? And that is for help in controlling oneself from speaking lashon hara, from gossiping, from speaking bad about others. Okay, that's what this segula is. And it's a powerful one once you know the story. We need a lot of stories because we forget, or the Yetzer Hara nudges us and says, I'm just going to talk. I just have to get this one thing out about this one person. And I've just got to say one thing to a friend about what happened. No, we really don't. We have to know where to draw the line. And we all have to start where we're at and then go from there. We have to go from there. If you're at point A, you can't jump to Y. Okay, you have to jump to B or skip to B or step to B. Anyway, please Hashem, this beautiful psalm, again, I'm going to remind everyone that this psalm was sponsored by Esther Elagorovich, and it should be a merit and a source of bracha for her and her family and for all of us learning together. It should be a merit for all of us that we may be able to together greet the Mashiach very speedily in our time.